Right, if we can make a start then, please. So welcome to session number 7, I think this is. So my name is Mark Rutter. I'm from Harper Adams University in Shropshire in the UK. And it's my pleasure to chair this session. We have 2 full talks, 2 20-minute talks, 3 short talks. So it's a relatively short session, but we're going to start with Vincent. So I'm going to hand straight over to you, Vincent. I will start your countdown timer.
Cool.
Over to you, Vincent.
Thank you.
Take a seat and be quiet.
Yeah, so I'm Vincent. I work in Edinburgh in Alistair Lawrence's lab at SRUC. And I'm going to talk to you today about a project funded by the UK NC3Rs in collaboration with a number of people. Some of them are in the room from a number of institutions described at the bottom.
It is on. Good.
It is on. Oh. Okay, so I'm a lab scientist, and before I started working on tickling, I spent a lot of time in rat rooms, and so this one is in reverse light cycle. So there's red light there in the darkness during the day because this is a time they're most active, and you can study them. And this is what you would find if you walked in the lab. You see your cages of rats, mostly juveniles, but you also see playing adults engaged in rough and tumble play. You can see at the top over there, there's a number of behaviors that you find regularly expressed in rough and tumble play, and it's associated with positive affective states. How do we know rats enjoy it and are experiencing positive affective states? It's because we record what's known as USVs, ultrasonic vocalizations, and I'm going to play 2 examples. Okay, so you heard some sort of like a bird chirping. This is transformed because you can see this is in the ultrasonic range beyond the hearing range of humans. Really high frequency sound signals used by the 50 kilohertz USVs are associated with positive affective states. So I won't go into too much detail here in the interest of time, but there's a number of studies with a lot of behavioral and neuropharmacological correlates of affective behaviors and positive affective states and production of USVs, and also mechanistic studies showing that production of USVs is associated with activation of the nucleus accumbens. So if play is a rewarding activity, why not simulate it in the lab using a technique known as rat tickling? And this was developed by Jaak Panksepp and Bergdorf. And what they did is they postulated that if rats, when they play, pin each other down and sort of, do their playful things, you could, grab them like on the top over there and tickle their belly when they're on their back. So pin them down and tickle their belly to induce positive affective states. And you do see indeed production of those 50 kilohertz USVs. And it has been successfully used in a number of studies in affective neuroscience. So the study of emotions in, well, at least in rodent and positive in rodents. And it has also been proposed as a measure to improve laboratory animal welfare, including through, because this is a heterospecific interaction, through a habituation to the presence of and the handling by humans. So we said, this is a good idea, so we'll try this. So we went in the lab, and you see on the left, we tried that, and that guy's really not having it. So I'll chase him. No, he's not having it. And at that point, I start thinking, there's a problem with me. I'm not very good. But when you study rats, generally, you study a small cohorts of very genetically related individuals. They're all brothers and cousins. They've all lived in the same small plastic boxes for generations. So, they're seen in science as being closely related, but you do observe that kind of variation where that guy, even when you remove the hand, is still staying on his back for a bit more. So very readily you observe a huge variety of responses between the sort of animals that let you do it and animals that avoid you. So I found that quite frustrating, and I was working a few doors away from Beate Nielsen at the time, and she did a Beerta Nielsen thing, and she said, let's write a positive paper about your anger. So we wrote an opinion paper where we said that, yes, rats differ in their response to tickling. And that's probably because there's too much emphasis on that pinning the rat down. So we renamed it, or actually we took the name of other papers. We said, let's use playful handling, where we will be more diverse in the interaction with the rats. So more of the behavioral moves that I showed you on the first slide, and also will be more flexible. So if somebody is seemingly, a rat is seemingly not enjoying it, well, you're just not going to try and pin it and force the fun upon him. And the idea is we could thereby generate more positive emotions, on the group, and improve welfare across a wider cohort of rats. And that's sort of what it looks like. This is a video. And people say, rat tickling, but actually it isn't all about the touch and the tickling and the, what's called the garcalesis, the sort of laughter induced by touching. It is about the chase. It's about, the contact, the physical contact is just a reminder that there's someone here, because the rat obviously can't see you very well. Yeah. So, then luckily we got a bit of funding with Alistair, and we even wrote a pre-registered report. Open science, and we he stated the hypothesis and that was the fun part of this work. Actually, it was translating our thoughts into an experiment, and I decided to go the pharmacological way and do a dose response of, okay, if pinning is slightly aversive, let's do a treatment where you'll have 0, 1, or 4 pinning events with the same duration of contact with the hand. And we predicted in our pre-registered hypothesis that there would be high level of enjoyment in the P1 and P0, so the treatments with 1 or 2 pin events, and we'd have slightly less enjoyment on average. So there will be individuals that enjoy a lot, but also individuals that don't enjoy it as much in the P4 group, and that would also be expressed by a higher variability. So you can find the paper if you're really interested, but really, really briefly, there were 8 cohorts of 16 rats, 8 males, 8 females, the 4 treatments, and after acclimatization, they had 6 sessions, and we recorded the USVs during those sessions, so the positive vocalizations. And we then did some behavioral testing and looked at physiological variable. And just to put it here, I mean, it's really obvious, to make it more obvious to you, because we see an interesting effect in the control animals. This is what the experience was. You went from your rack to that little arena where you were tickled, and then went back in. So that was all. So I'm going to talk briefly about some of those results. I've made 2 slides about this because it's a bit complicated, and so forgive me if I'm repeating myself. But the data about USV production during the treatment phase, once you put it in a GLM, you see sex effects, treatment effects, day effects, sex by treatment, and sex by day interactions. Okay, so what it means is obviously females responded differently to the males. Over time, from day 1 to day 6, the production of USVs go up. And that's because, it takes a bit of time to get used to the interaction, maybe discover you enjoy it, etc. So we generally do a few sessions for the animal to get the maximum response out of the animal. And there was a difference in the enjoyment of treatment. So generally, males, what was really interesting, and that's why I put that little diagram with the cage rats going to the cage, is the enjoyment of females as a control differ widely from that of males. So males, you put them in the box and nothing happened. They were controls, so there was a passive hand in there, and they just sort of said the same thing. Whereas females, over time, the more you put them in the box, the more they vocalized. And this is the same data in a slightly different manner, in a slightly different way, using the groupings. So the highest in terms of the group, in terms of vocalization production, was the females with a P1, so 1 pin event. So followed by the P0, not different. P1 male was lower. Then you had the 2 P4 treatments, and then male P0, female control, and followed by the male controls. So in terms of those 50 kilohertz USV production, we found more USVs were produced during the low pinning treatments, at least in the females. So P1 had more production of USVs than female. We saw the same pattern in the anticipation phase. So after a few days, when you put the animal in the arena, you realize, they've learned and they're expressing the same sort of enjoyment. We collected fecal pellets at 3 points. So after at the start of the experiment, before the tickling treatment started, or playful handling, actually. Then after the 6 sessions, and then 2 days later after the 2 behavioral tests. And those 2 behavioral tests were somewhat seen as mild challenges. So we looked at quart metabolites, which is an integration of the HP axis activity over that time. So, whatever your adrenals have secreted gets metabolized by your liver and you put your stress away. So really, it's just an integral of those tiny measurements you could do in the plasma over time. And very interestingly, so there was a sex difference. Males produce more than females, but we found that the treatments, so we were pretty agnostic about this. We had, we thought, oh, maybe it's stress reducing, but maybe because it's playful and it's arousing. But anyway, what we found was there was higher metabolites in the controls in the P4 treatments, and there was a reduction in the P1 and P0. So somewhat stress reducing. We didn't see any impact on the behavioral test we used. That could be because we actually tested the animals in the same room, under the red light, and we didn't want to put some bright lights on the open arms of the plus maze, for instance. So that was slightly unconventional. That could be why there was no difference. And also all our rats were really highly handled, so no effect. The only difference was females had more locomotion. And we looked at cytokines. Again, that's because we're interested in not just the welfare impact, but also the health correlates of having a good time. We know a lot about what it is to have a bad time. We asked the question of, do you have an immune effect of 6 days of tickling? And the answer is, we find some leads for the future. So using the USVs and using the fecal quart metabolites, we show that treatments with fewer pins were linked to lower stress and more enjoyment, mostly in the females. We had previously reported sex-specific effects of the responses to tickling. And in fact, we actually looked at that literature afterwards. There's reports that females, when you look at home cage behavior, females seem to engage in less pinning behaviors than male rats do. So that sort of reflects the naturally occurring behavior. So the question was, should all animals be treated equal? So our initial question was that of individual variability within a group. Now, our simple GLM just throws us an answer, which is a sex difference. Now, there's more work to be done on this in terms of individual trajectory and, the possible temperaments and animal personalities, etc. The implications are, well, what do we do once we know this? Do we implement personalized welfare measures? Do we have to take all practical variations into account? That's quite a difficult situation. So whether, is it girls just want to have fun or boys don't cry? You have to find the right middle. What we're doing now with the bit of money that we have left on the grant is we're looking at this sex treatment interaction to test whether those sex differences can be seen using other markers. So we're using the affective bias test in collaboration with colleagues from Bristol, and we've run an experiment with a condition place preference. It's a quick one. I want to show you this video because this is Lamia who went in the lab and she picked it up. She picked up the tickling in a few weeks. It wasn't all easy, but it's just to say that anyone can do it. And this is sort of a diagram of what the CPP looks like. It's essentially you tickle in one room, so you associate this room with feeling good. About USVs, I didn't tell you much. If you want to find out more about recording ultrasonic vocalizations in rodents, we recently organized a workshop. So get in touch if you're interested. And this is the team, Alistair and Sarah, always there, Beate Nielsen, the team for the NC3R, our students, and NC3R for funding. And this is me being tickled by a rat.
So thank you very much, Vincent. Perfectly to time. So this is now open for questions. Again, please do give your name and any affiliation. So we have a question here.
Hello, Barbara Bastos from CBU. I was just wondering if you noticed any variation between male and female handlers or ticklers for the rats?
Yeah, so we haven't, because we didn't test it. You know, to do this, you'd have to have the same group of rats tickled by males and females, but then every handler is slightly different, so it would be really difficult to test. But yeah, we are aware that there's, you know, usually through sort of sweat smells, etc. So,
Yep.
but I didn't. So I did the tickling as a male, and I didn't. Perhaps I'm well groomed, and I didn't have any sort of odor that led to a repression of positive emotional states in the rodents. So, but it would be really interesting, yeah. But beyond the sex differences and the, you know, putative stress effect induced by males and male odors, the inter-operator variability is also fascinating to study.
Yep, thanks.
Do we have any more questions in the room? I understand there aren't any online. No, I shall take chair's prerogative. Personalised welfare, I was sort of quite intrigued by that. Just talk us through how that might work. Would you have to test their sort of preferences first? Or?
Yeah, so, well, this is it. I think, you know, it's knowledge is power sort of thing. And we're doing those studies. If we're going to go and tell people, you know, oh, you're a rat user, surely you should do a bit of tickling because it makes your rat feel good. I've been on the other side of this as an experimenter. I've actually written to ethics committees to refuse certain enrichments because I was trying to reproduce a model, whereas I hadn't used the enrichment. And, you know, you only get one shot at doing your study usually. So there is a reluctance in using animal welfare. So we're showing the effects. And what's happening here is we're saying, okay, but there's 6 differences. So what do we do with this? And do we have to go down to the individual level of preference? Or do we just apply, you know, one size fits all measure?
Yeah. Good. Any more questions for Vincent? No, we do have a question. Right at the back.
Thank you. Hi, Sherry from University of Prince Edward Island. This is a bit unrelated, but I think rat tickling's become kind of popular on social media. I was just wondering if now with these differences that you found, you think it's important to educate rat owners, or if you need to do more research in the pet context. Thank you.
Well, I mean, it's great if people tickle their rats at home. We're trying to sort of implement it in the workplace to improve the sort of rat welfare and also the benefit, you know, the same way that rat owners at home probably enjoy their rats more by, you know, in hetero-specific play. We believe that there might actually be beneficial effects for the human. I mean, it was a lot of fun for me to do it, and we talk about it with including our technical colleagues, because I think it gives people a sense of empathy, you know, the fact that you realize your animal experiences positive emotions and has fun like many other creatures. So that's the reason for which we would promote our work. And at home, I don't know. I mean, people do what they like in the. But yeah, no, it's positive if people want to tickle their rats out.
Right, great. Let's thank Vincent again. And we'll just get ready for our next speaker. So Lauren is going to talk to us about dog adopters declining support, I understand. So over to you, Lauren. I'll just reset the clock for you.
Hi everyone. So yeah, my name's Lauren. Thanks for having me come talk today on why new adopters are declining free dog behaviour support in newly adopted dogs and which dog demographic factors make that more likely. So I'm from the Dogs Trust, and just to tell you a little bit about our organisation, if you're not familiar with that, we have 23 rehoming centres across the UK and Ireland and Northern Ireland, and we're in the organisation is defined to rehome dogs. So we take in dogs, rehome them, and that's approximately 12 to 14,000 dogs a year. We've got a couple of other things up there on what else we do, but the key kind of aspects we'll be focusing on today is supporting owners and adopters and helping prevent problems in future as well. So the aim of this study was to investigate factors and themes associated with dog adopters declining free over the phone behaviour support, which is put together as a proactive way, a proactive intervention of trying to reduce re-relinquishment of dogs back into kennels after being adopted. And this was after, within our post-adoption support calls, they'd reported a behaviour of concern. And we've used a mixed method analysis to do this. So why are we interested in post-adoption support at Dogs Trust? It takes, takes resource, time, money. It's a continuation of care for our dogs. It also leads to, with the feedback we get, a form of customer satisfaction, and it's a customer service in a sense. People don't feel like they've just been abandoned with a dog they don't know to begin with. It may help an individual dog to stay in the home longer, as I mentioned, preventing re-relinquishment. And tricky dogs may be more likely to be adopted. It can offer a form of support. It can also potentially reduce euthanasia risk. And it's a way of enhancing our learning and research about our operational practice. So what is working and what isn't in the rehoming and aftercare process. And also it's a form of, it helps provide staff satisfaction. If you've worked with a dog for many weeks, months, you've cared for that dog like your own, then you kind of want to know that it's going to be well cared for and it's not running into problems and it won't be re-relinquished when back in the, when in home environment. So our post-adoption support call surveys, and I'll refer to post-adoption as this PAS, post-adoption support. We have them at 3 time points post-adoption, at 2 days, at 2 weeks and 4 months. And during those calls, we ask a variety of questions about the dog's health, about the behaviour and the adopter experience overall. And what we'll be focusing on today is behaviours of concern, which I'll define now. So the behaviours of concern we're looking for, we have a customer support centre that make these calls and fill in the surveys online. And they have a prompted list of behaviours that we ask them to read out to the adopters to see whether the adopters have noticed any of them. So potential aggressive related behaviours, not strictly aggression behaviours, but just again being proactive and trying to intervene if there is a potential issue. A growling, baring teeth, all the things you'd expect, snapping, biting, lunging forwards whilst barking, grabbing and mouthing as well. Also standing very still and staring. Other potential behaviours of concern are separation-related behaviours. So if a dog is left alone by itself, then any barking, howling, whining, toileting, destruction around the door, lots of other things, abnormal behaviours, vomiting, drooling, trying to get out the door with you. We ask about those as well. And then we have an unprompted list, which is a question, do the adopters have any other behaviours of concern that are not within these 2 categories, and that's their chance to speak about anything they may be having an issue with. And then if they report a behaviour of concern, at each PAS call, each of the 3 time points, we can offer them a form of support, which is an online to speak over the phone to a behaviourist. So the data we're looking at today is from June to December in 2019, and this is collected from 20 of our rehoming centres. And this includes 5,425 adoptions after data exclusions. And this was the number of adopters that were called at 2 days. And then this dropped slightly at 2 weeks because it's a voluntary opt-in phone call after 2 days. So that dropped to 4,301, and then at 4 months, 4,013. So you can see that the numbers still stay quite high across those 3 time points. And the percentage of PAS calls that reported a behaviour of concern, whilst the numbers dropped slightly, the overall percentage of these behaviours of concern reported stayed around 41% at 2 days and 4 months, and increased slightly with the 2 week mark to 46. And surprisingly, when we first looked at this data back in 2020, there was a decline, or there was a surprising number of people declining this free support, and that was equated to 73% overall. And this was a surprise to us, but maybe it shouldn't have been, because from doing some further research, there's several interventions have been designed for post-adoption support behavioural management by globally across the world, and by several different research establishments. And they've all shown this similar outcome of limited success in trying to design these interventions. So we have examples of written resources, socialization classes, over-the-phone counselling for separation-related behaviours, and free trainer-led walks post-adoption. And the rates of engagement always tend to be lower than expected, is what's reported. So we wanted to explore when and why owners didn't accept support in the first 4 months of adoption, because that could help us gain insight into adopter attitudes towards dog behaviours, and it could help provide evidence-based ideas for the organisation to increase uptake and also in designing alternative interventions in future. What I should say before we go on is, although we looked at it from the flip side of how many people declined, you could also spin that to say 27% of new adopters accepted this free behavioural support service, which, depending on how you view this, could actually be a very successful intervention. We know that not everyone necessarily wants to use, it's not everyone's kind of cup of tea using an over-the-phone service. So this wasn't all kind of bad. Depends whether you're a half glass full, half glass empty. But we decided to look a bit more into this declining PAS support, firstly using quantitative analysis. So we have the GLM points listed up there. So the binomial dependent variable was declining support, yes or no. And then we had the fixed effects listed in yellow there. So dog sex, dog size, the behaviour of concern reported, crossbreed status, the dog age at rehoming, and also the PAS call time point that was reported, and that adoption ID of the dog, which was all individual, was the random effect. Running this model showed that declining support was actually more likely at 2 weeks post-adoption compared to 2 days, when having a puppy compared to a dog over 6 months old, and when reporting behaviours of concern in the following combinations. So what the figure on the right there shows us is that actually people are more likely to accept advice when they're reporting other behaviours that they think are behaviours of concern, rather than when reporting, I don't know where my laser's gone, but the SRB or the ARB, separation related behaviour or aggression related behaviour that we think is a concern, which was an interesting find. So we wanted to investigate this more and the themes associated with adopters declining this behavioural support when reporting a behaviour of concern during PAS calls. And to do this, we used inductive thematic analysis of the free text collected by our customer service centre during the PAS calls, and we ran this analysis developing 4 themes from adopters' responses when declining behavioural support. And so I'll take you through what these were. This is an infographic we put together on just as a brief summary. So awareness but no action yet, managing behaviour, feels advice not needed, and then the kind of 4th outlier theme was belief of cause. So in terms of awareness but no action yet, this was really adopters had begun to observe a potential behaviour of concern or realise the implications of it, but didn't yet take steps to address it. So the sub-themes within this category were, it was an expected or known issue. For example, it was mentioned to the adopters at the time of adoption. They wanted to wait and see for the next PAS call, or will call back if needed. They will wait and see generally, just in terms of monitoring it. And it's early days still, the dog's still settling in. I won't go through all the examples from the data. These are just ones we picked out, but there's obviously much data to support this. So what this theme showed us, or appeared to show us, was the representation stage in the trans-theoretical human behaviour change model of contemplation and preparation prior to taking action. So this, what we thought was this seemed to be a positive sign of behaviour change that might be likely on the horizon. So, and that behaviour change would be seeking support for their behaviour. At 2 days, which is where this theme appeared more often, adopters seem to be learning about their dog still, maybe still building a bond and in this information gathering stage. And interestingly, the sub-theme will wait for the next PAS call or call if needed, seemed to suggest that the service was a form of indirect support, which could be equally as useful as direct support for new adopters. The second theme, managing behaviour, This was adopters already taking steps to address behaviour independently and free of the PAS service. So whilst obviously I'm discussing this over the phone service, we have other forms of post-adoption support, which includes Dogs Trust Dog School, so free training classes for dogs adopted. We have a clinical behaviourist team, which may support dogs' behaviour with medication if needed. We also have a customer relations management software that keeps all their data within the organisation. So if people do call up, we have that track record of them. So there's lots of ways we can kind of support dogs post-adoption. So going back to managing behaviour, sub-themes included tailoring routines. This might be, as the example, the dog's name got bitten by this dog and had to see the vet. Now they do not leave them alone together. So people just altering their daily routines or what they're doing with the dog. Product purchase to assist, for example, the harness mentioned in the reference. Alternative source of support sought, like using an external behaviourist or dealing with it. And quite often this was within the free text, no further information was given. Potentially here, owners could be moving from contemplation and preparation stages of trans-theoretical human behaviour change model, that's stages 2 and 3, to action, stage 4, in dealing with their dog's behaviour. So it's quite, in a way, it's good that they feel independent and confident in maybe managing the behaviour. However, we're not exactly sure what they're doing to manage that behaviour, and that's where we would want to promote sort of positive reinforcement methods over negative or positive punishment. Interestingly, Weidman et al., another team of our researchers at Dogs Trust, independently, while studying non-attendance of adopters to dog training classes, also came up with this managing theme within their work. And this sense of reoccurring themes throughout the data of when interviewing or analysing free text from adopters maybe show a trend in attitudes generally. This theme also shows, as I mentioned, some proactivity. Owners are aware and taking steps of dogs' behaviours, and it's a form of decision-making around taking action. So it may be that they feel like a sense of power or control with that already and not needing extra help. The third theme, feels advice not needed. This was where adopters declined the help offered, feeling no action was needed, or they were even unconcerned about the behaviour. Bearing in mind, these aren't just the other behaviours they've reported, they could be aggression-related or separation-related, which have concerns for both human and dog welfare. The sub-themes here were one-off. The behaviour was a one-off, sorry. The behaviour is improving. They were simply just unconcerned, or they just simply declined the help offered and no further information was given. So this indicates that some adopters would not be seeking assistance at this point in time. And Sanders in 1990 suggested the positive and optimistic framing of undesirable behaviours can actually be a useful coping strategy. So maybe it's not all bad. Many comments under this theme suggested adopters were unconcerned, but maybe that's concerning depending on what the behaviour was. In this theme, often puppy behaviours came up quite a lot. So owners suggesting that because the dog was a puppy, they weren't concerned. This has been demonstrated in previous studies where owner perceptions of dog behaviour tend to change as dogs age. So they go from these mischievous puppies with unintentional actions to older dogs acting deliberately. So it may be that we see a change in this attitude over time. And then the last theme was belief of cause. This was, as I say, an outlier to the other themes because it was just looking at simply patterns that were coming up in the data context rather than the reason specifically for declining advice. And this was worth mentioning because there were a few reoccurring themes that we wanted to address. Here, adopters provided information on the context of the situation and their perceived understanding of why a behaviour occurred, sometimes appearing as a form of justification for it. And these were physical contact. So quite often a behaviour reported, I must say it was often potentially aggressive related behaviours, were related to a close physical contact between an adopter and dog. Again, good for us to know and have flagged as a charity on future interventions. Not in an aggressive way was the other excuse often used, and the context of when it happened. And here the adopters voluntarily provided contextual information seemingly as a way of justifying or excusing their dogs. So this has been mentioned before in a theme by different papers as the defense of, sort of in the defense of dogs, and in child behavior, it's noted that attributing children's misbehavior of situations outside of their control can help caregivers maintain a positive view of the child, which may be a good thing or a bad thing, depending on your thoughts. So just to say that acceptance rates of this behavior support were under 50%, but that's been previously reported. So it seems about right for this kind of intervention. Dog behavior post-adoption has been shown to change over time. This may be due partly to the differences in questioning style between prompted and unprompted questions. It really requires a perception of the owner's perception as being a problem of the behavior for them to want to seek support. And there's many psychological factors at play for things like belief bias and the perceived benefits of receiving advice that may be influencing their decision. And I don't think I have time to go through the summary, but if you have any questions, feel free to ask now. And I'd just like to thank my team members and Dogs Trust for funding these projects.
Thank you very much, Lauren. You have managed to leave a bit of time for a couple of questions. So you caught my eye first. And then...
Okay. Hi, thanks for the interesting talk. I really like that you mentioned your pronouns in the beginning. My question is, do you know if there was a difference in declining the support between people who owned their first dog or already had more experience with dogs?
We don't collect that data. So something we've just this year changed our rehoming, how we're rehoming. So previously we've been rehoming people to dogs, and we've switched it to rehoming dogs to people. So we're now collecting some more data about the adopters, which obviously with their consent, we might in the future be able to put into models like the one we showed, that was shown, to maybe find out a little bit more there. And I think that's crucial really, to have a better understanding of adopters' attitudes. So hopefully it's something we can do in the future.
Yes, Joe Garraway from the University Centre Spa-Schultz. I was just wondering whether breed had any effect on owners' tolerance of behaviours. So just thinking about the change in legislation in the UK.
Yeah.
Were owners of bigger breeds or like challenging breeds more likely to request help, or was there any?
So dog size didn't come out as significant in the model. There's around 60% of our dogs are crossbreed. So cleaning breed data is always a nightmare and controversial, and depending on how you do it. It's something we'd like to look into more. And if anyone wants to talk to me about how your chosen preference for grouping breeds, whether you use the FCI grouping or UK Kennel Club, I'm happy to talk about that all day long, because I'm looking at some return to kennel data at the moment, and it's something we'd like to investigate more. But we found that size at the moment is the best kind of indicator of dog type, but it's something we want to look into more.
And time for one more question.
Thank you. Courtney Graham, Ontario Vet College. I'm curious, with your data set, if you have the possibility to look at risk factors for mentioning the different things, if you have like the full data set to look at the adopter characteristics of mentioning different things.
Yeah, not yet.
Okay.
But as I say, we've this year changed our rehoming process slightly. So with consent from adopters, we will be able to look at that in future. And I think that will hold a lot of new information that will be quite useful for the charity.
Thank you.
And the dogs.
Right, thank you, Lauren. Right, we now have a change of pace. We're now going on to the 3-minute presentations. So, Patricia, you're going to be first up. I didn't get a chance to talk to Patricia earlier, so come and stand here ready to go. There's a timer. You'll get the red card at 3 minutes. Okay, so we'll need to get your slides up. I think if you... And they should also go. So if you use that control, that should be good. So you're ready to go, Patricia? Excellent.
Okay, thank you. So this is part of our trial from Ghent University. So we try to evaluate corticosterone in plasma and feathers to find a way to assess animal welfare. So a brief introduction, we know that in the last years we have a growing concern about animal welfare, and we should have a good way to assess it. While blood corticosterone is a well-accepted way to assess acute stress in animals in general, including broilers, there is a question about feathers. And the objective of our trial was to validate the measurement of corticosterone in different type of feathers as a stress indicator in broiler chickens. So what we have done, we daily provided corticosterone to 60 chickens, 60 male chickens from 1 to 42 day olds. And here are the treatments from 0 to 5 milligram per kilo of corticosterone. So every day at 9 a.m., I took chicken by chicken, I weighted them, and according to the weight and to the treatment, we provided oral corticosterone. At days 14 and 28, we collected at 2 p.m. dorsal feathers and blood, and at 42 days, we collected again dorsal feathers and blood, but also wing and tail feathers. And we evaluated corticosterone using the LCMS method. That's a more precise one compared to ELISA. Some of the results, we didn't find correlation between increasing levels of provided corticosterone and corticosterone in plasma, probably because we provided corticosterone at 9 a.m. and we collected samples at 2 p.m. So maybe during this period of time, they had time enough to metabolize the corticosterone. And also, we didn't find correlation between plasma and feather. However, when we evaluated body weight, we could find a decrease in body weight with higher levels of corticosterone. And at 42 days, the chickens that received 5 milligrams per kilo, they achieved more or less 3 kilograms, while the ones that received the highest level, they finished with more or less 1.5 to 2 kilograms. When we evaluated corticosterone in these 3 types of feathers, and at 3/8 when we evaluated dorsal feathers, we could see indeed increasing levels of corticosterone with increasing levels of the dosage that we provided to them. So the take-home message of this trial was that the administration of chronic corticosterone negatively affected the body weight of these chickens, and feathers could be used as a long-term stress indicator in broiler chickens, but of course we need to consider the type of feathers because they have different time of development and also the age of the broilers. And the next step will be to analyze the droppings that we also collected, but we are still analyzing that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was perfectly for time. We will have time for a quick question for each of our speakers in a moment. So next up, we've got Michelle. I think if you just use the remote control, you're happy. You know what you're doing. Let me restart your clock. Right, I'm having technical problems now.
Hi, everyone. Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Michelle, and I'll be talking to you about one of the trials that I ran in my PhD at SRUC in Scotland. And this was in partnership with another SRUC PhD student, Amy Walker, and all of our collective supervisors. So we wanted to use Bluetooth beacons to test the potential of the distance between ewes and lambs in the early weeks of life as a potential welfare indicator. And the reason we wanted to do this is that we know that the bond between the ewe and the lamb is absolutely crucial, especially in the early days and weeks of life in lambs. It increases lamb survival if there's a strong bond, and it's good for ewe and lamb welfare. And we also know that technology creates opportunities for us to monitor welfare, especially in these kinds of extensive systems that are very prevalent in Scotland and in the UK. Both of these pictures are from some of the research sites that I worked on, and you can see fences in these pictures because they are both from research farms, but a lot of the times these animals are on vast unfenced pastures, and so consistent monitoring of their welfare and even their health can be challenging and time-consuming and expensive. So if we can use technology to help us do this, it might be a very useful tool. So the specific tool we tested in this trial was these Bluetooth beacons. They're tiny plastic triangular shaped, the size of a Sharpie cap there for scale. They were in the lambs' collars that were stretchy collars that grew with the lambs. And the ewes were wearing the receivers, which were a bit bigger, and were sending live information to a LoRa gateway. So we were collecting live information every 5 minutes about the distance between these animals. And we were monitoring their welfare throughout. And what we found was that ewes that were facing welfare challenges, specifically that had fleece problems, so like losing fleece or trailing fleece, and lame ewes were keeping their lambs closer, or their lambs happened to be closer to them than ewes that were healthy according to the scores that we were looking at. The mechanisms behind these results are unclear. We've got a few ideas as to what might have been causing it. And please come and speak to me if you want to hear all about those ideas. But what we've taken from this experiment is that there is potential to use these affordable and easy to use beacons to monitor welfare in extensive situations, and that there's potential to use ewe-lamb distance as a proxy for ewe welfare. We can't say anything about lamb welfare from this study because our lambs were very healthy for the 6 weeks we looked at them, and we didn't see any welfare issues in them. So thank you very much for your attention, this quick description of my trial. And I want to thank the SRUC technicians that helped us collect all this data, and Census, which was the company that helped us build those purpose-made receivers. Thank you very much.
Right, thank you very much, Michelle. So the last of the three talks, Joanne.
Thank you.
Over
Hi,
to you.
everyone. Yep, so if you, hopefully the video comes on, if you watch the bird on the bottom right-hand side of the video, she goes towards the feeder, and you'll see that she's actually chased and or pecked by every member of the group there. And in the laying hen industry, these are known anecdotally as pariah birds. MSc student Emily Greenwood did a short survey of looking at 20 laying hen producers and found that the vast majority of those 20 had pariahs on their farms, and that then maybe the farmer thought that they had reduced welfare and perhaps affected the farm productivity as well. So we wanted to know whether we could quantify the behavioural differences between pariahs and the rest of the flock, and in particular, are they persistent? Do they stay as pariahs when they move to a different flock and different flock mates? And importantly, we also wanted to look if the behavioural differences indicated compromised welfare. One of the hypotheses we have was that being a pariah perhaps had something to do with their kind of social responsiveness. So we wanted to know how they compared with other birds with these two social kind of attributes, social learning and socially mediated arousal, which is a rudimentary type of empathy. So we got 8 pariahs from commercial farms and 8 from our own poultry facility. We classified them according to some preset criteria. We housed them for 3 weeks in completely new pens with new flock mates. Amongst those flock mates was one kind of matched control bird that was matched for the weight and the body condition of the pariah. We recorded their home pen behaviour for 3 weeks, and then at the end of the 3 weeks, we measured their capacity for socially mediated arousal. So we looked at how they responded to 2 of their flock mates under mild stress, so in terms of their behaviour and their physiology. And we also did a social learning test to see how well they learnt to peck a screen for a food reward. So briefly, we found distinct behavioural differences between the pariahs and controls. So pariahs spent less time feeding. They spent less time on the floor, they spent more time on the perches, and they spent more time standing alert and receiving aggression. We didn't find any differences between the pariahs and the controls in terms of their performance in the social learning and also the socially mediated arousal. So the bottom left graph, all birds learnt to peck the screen in response after seeing a trained demonstrator, but they didn't learn to peck the correct coloured circle. But regardless, this was the same between the 2 groups. And then on the right, that's just one of our indicators of socially mediated arousal. That's eye temperature response to conspecifics being stressed. We expect eye temperature to go down when the animals are stressed, and they did for both groups of animals, so there were no differences. To summarise then, hens classified as pariahs showed these kind of persistent behavioural differences that importantly, they stayed the same when we moved them into a new environment, into a new social group. We didn't find any evidence of reduced social responsiveness, at least in the 2 tests that we did, although there's lots of potential for further study on that. Importantly, we found that those behavioural characteristics do indicate that pariahs have a reduced welfare. We need to do more research to find out what is the prevalence of pariahs on farms. We found them quite easily, but what percentage of the flock are pariahs? And there are also loads of really, really interesting fundamental questions on the mechanisms of pariah birds, and yeah, lots more to study. So thank you very much.
Right, so can we have all three, Patricia, Michelle, come and join Joanne on the stage. So the three presentations are now open for questions. Yes, you have the microphone already.
Hi, Steve Wiggins, UFAW. Question for Joe. So when you took the pariah out of the group they were in, did another bird within the group then become a pariah? So did they shift their behavior to another weaker bird in that group and start pecking it and treating it similarly? So was it replaced?
Yeah, it's a really interesting, good question. Yeah, we don't know. So for the farm, we didn't go and visit again. And yeah, we don't know for the other study either. But that's a really interesting question of whether it's to do with, yeah, do all social groups have a pariah in, or yeah, does someone have to be the pariah? Yeah.
Do we have any more questions? Do we have anything online? I should keep checking. We have got some hands going up, so we did. And is it for one of the other speakers? Excellent. So we will go at the back.
Hi, this is for Michelle. You know the distance between the ewe and the lamb, and theoretically you can also estimate the distance from the lamb and the lamb or the ewe to a particular point. Can you use this technology to locate exactly the animals, to retrieve more information on location, velocity, activity? Have you looked at this? Have you used this? And also, where can I get these gizmos? Because these are brilliant.
Yes, so I didn't look at that personally, but Amy Walker, an SRUC PhD student who her focus was much more on the technological side of this project, and I was looking at the welfare side, but she created an equation that allows you to use these Bluetooth beacons essentially as GPS beacons to give you location information. So you just have to have 3 fixed points in the field that you can use to triangulate. And so I believe there's a soon-to-be publication on that topic coming. And we got the beacons from Amazon, and the readers were purpose-built in partnership with an engineering firm at the University of Glasgow. But I believe all the components are readily available, and I'm sure Tony Waterhouse would be happy to speak to you about their design as well.
Right, we did have a question. Is it for Patricia by any chance? It is, so that's very useful. That's all three speakers.
So there's a very seemingly quite significant relationship between body weight and corticosterone. Say I was a chicken farmer trying to make lots of money. Would that suggest if you had a corticosterone antagonist, it could potentially increase their body weight?
I don't know, but the dosage we use, it was quite high, even the 1 milligram per kilo. So that's why I expected already that they would have a decrease in body weight. But actually what's way more than we expected, the opposite. I'm not sure.
We do have time for one quick question for any of the speakers, if there is one. If not, there is an announcement. So you've got coffee now. At 4 o'clock, you have a choice. You can either come back in here for some more talks, or actually at 5 minutes to 4, if you want to join the workshop on Beyond Academia, that's going to be downstairs. The room seems to be quite difficult to find. So the suggestion is congregate downstairs at 5 to 4 by the registration desk. So just by the doorway, and you'll be guided in for the discussion. So again, you've got the choice. You can come in here or you can go down to the workshop. I don't think there's any other announcements. He says looking at the, no, please, let's thank the three speakers. Yes, well prompted. Thank you. So yes, please go enjoy coffee.